All right, let's get into it. When you look at a sales report, it's easy to just see a bunch of numbers. Products, prices, quantities, kind of dry, right? But what if you look a little closer? What if that data could actually tell a story? A story about a city's social life, its celebrations, its whole rhythm. Well, that's exactly what we're going to do today. So, this whole story starts with one guy, an independent salesman and data analyst in Kampala named Edward Bogera. He's on the ground and he notices something. November isn't just another month, it's different, it's buzzing. He saw this perfect storm of social events brewing, and he understood the why behind the sales before he even opened a spreadsheet. And because he kept such an amazing record, we have this incredible, one-of-a-kind opportunity. We get to use his private sales data to decode the social pulse of Uganda's capital. Now, this isn't some huge national survey. This is a real, granular, on-the-ground snapshot of what a city really wants when it's time to celebrate.
Okay, so let's start with the context. Before we even touch a single chart or graph, we've got to understand what was actually happening. What was the vibe on the ground in Kampala last November?
So, as Edward pointed out, November is basically peak party season. You've got wedding season in full swing, you've got cultural introduction ceremonies, which are a huge deal. Then, companies are throwing their big end-of-year parties, and on top of all that, you have regular birthdays and a bunch of new bars and restaurants opening up. It's not just random buying, it's the city's entire social calendar kicking into high gear.
All right, so we know why people were buying. The next logical question is, what were they actually buying? Which drinks were fueling all these celebrations? The breakdown here is pretty fascinating.
Okay, so check this out. The top two players are what you might expect. Whiskey's leading the charge at almost 24%, a classic choice. Wine is right on its heels. But then look at number three, tequila, pulling in almost 17% of all the money spent. That is huge. It's not just some niche party shot here. It's a mainstream powerhouse, even beating out champagne and sparkling wine. That tells you a lot about the city's changing tastes. So we know the categories, but saying tequila or wine is pretty broad, right? Which specific brands were people asking for by name? Let's peel back one more layer here. Just look at that number for a second. 12.7%. That's the slice of the entire month's revenue that came from one single brand. I mean, think about that. For every $10 spent across hundreds of products, more than $1 went to this one thing. So what brand has that kind of pull? And there it is, Jose Cuervo Tequila. It's not just number one. It's number one by a total landslide. Its market share is nearly double the next competitor, which is the South African wine brand Nederburg. And right behind them is another South African wine, KVV. So the story is crystal clear. One tequila brand is absolutely dominating, followed by two powerhouse wine labels. But the biggest seller isn't always the most interesting part of the story. Sometimes you have to look for the outlier, the one product that maybe doesn't sell a lot, but when it does, it tells you something completely different about the market. And here is our outlier, Clase Azul Tequila. In terms of sheer number of bottles sold, it was a tiny blip, less than 0.2%. Barely registers. But now, look at the revenue. It brought in almost 2.5% of the total cash. That massive gap between volume and value tells you one thing. This is pure, ultra-premium luxury. Its presence proves that there's a serious appetite for high-end, expensive goods in Kampala. Okay, so we've got the why, the what, and the which brands. But where is all this stuff actually going? Who's on the other end of these sales? Is it just people stocking up for a house party, or is it something bigger? Yeah, so this isn't about you or me grabbing a bottle for the weekend. This is overwhelmingly a business-to-business operation. The biggest customers by far are distributors and wholesalers. These are the people who supply the entire city. This tells us our salesman isn't just selling bottles. He's a vital link in Kampala's whole celebration supply chain, making sure all the venues are stocked and ready. And this is where it all comes together. We can actually look at the data over time and see the city's heartbeat. We can visualize the rhythm of how Kampala prepares to celebrate. This is where the story really comes alive. Just look at this. You don't have to be a data scientist to see the pattern here, right? It's like a heartbeat. Spike, then a dip, Another spike, then a dip, week after week. That's the rhythm of the city. Sales build up during the week and then they peak right before the weekend hits. It's the sound of the entire city stocking up for the party. Now let's zoom in on that pulse. This looks a little chaotic, but your eye is immediately drawn to one thing, isn't it? That absolute skyscraper of a spike right in the middle of the month. What is that? Well, it's almost entirely Jose Cuervo. A few huge orders for that one brand created the single biggest sales surge of the month, driving that weekend rhythm we just saw. So it all connects. It's this perfect, predictable cycle. First, you've got the occasion, the weddings, the parties. That creates the demand. Second, the businesses, distributors, bars, they stock up midweek to get ready. Third, our sales data peaks as those big orders go through. And fourth, the celebration itself happens. The city comes alive. And that brings us to the most important point of all. This data, it's not just about booze. It's a diary. It's a record of a city's social calendar, its economy, its taste for luxury, and the weekly pulse of its life. It's a portrait of Kampala at play. And that just makes you wonder, doesn't it? If we can pull this rich of a story from one salesman's private report for just 1 month, what other incredible stories are hiding in plain sight in all the data that's being created around us every single day? What else could we learn if we just took the time to look?